This is You've Already Been Hacked, recorded on 18 April 2021. Okay, so let's get with what was one of the bigger items over the past week, which is the Biden administration has unveiled a sweeping set of sanctions against the Russian government, as well as other private individuals and a number of Russian tech and defense companies that the U.S. government claims assisted Russian intelligence in hacking and election interference schemes. The administration did this through executive order, and that order gives the Attorney General and the Secretaries of State and Treasury authority to seize and or block property, assets of any individual or business in the tech or defense sector if a determination is made that they had been aiding Moscow in these operations. So, taking a step back, the same thing could happen to, in the United States. You could argue could happen to your government contractors. So that's kind of what they're saying here. Treasury moved quickly and leveraged its new authorities, announcing the same day the order came out that 6 Russian technology and cybersecurity organizations would be subject to new sanctions. They included the Research Center ERA, Technopolis, which officials say houses and supports the Russian Main Intelligence Directorate, also known as the GRU, engaged in offensive cyber operations and the development of dual-use military technologies. 3 other companies were also included in these sanctions, all of which are alleged to have research and development for malicious cyber operations carried out by the SVR, the FSB, as well as the GRU. Treasury also slapped 4 websites that have been flagged as propaganda outlets for the Kremlin, and Alexei Gromov, the first deputy chief of staff for the Russian president, for their participation in election interference schemes against the United States and other countries. CISA has issued a cybersecurity advisory along with other federal agencies for 5 critical vulnerabilities that the U.S. government says are being actively exploited by SVR operatives, alongside a formal attribution by the United States government that Russian agencies were behind the SolarWinds hack that started in 2020. The attribution is backed up by other intelligence allies, including NATO, and others in similar announcements this past week. The vulnerabilities highlighted by the advisory include a 2019 flaw in FortiGate VPN, an arbitrary file reading vulnerability in PulseSecure, and a directory transversal flaw in Citrix Application Delivery Controller and Gateway, and a command injection vulnerability in VMware products. All but one of the vulnerabilities were discovered and publicized in 2019, highlighting how frequently nation-state hacking groups leverage older vulnerabilities to target unpatched victim systems and networks. The moral of the story here, folks, is do your updates. The advisory went on to warn organizations that if their networks had been compromised by the Russians or another nation-state actor, it's likely they will not be easy to kick out. Quote, expect that the risk from data stolen or modified before a device was patched will not be alleviated by patching or simple remediation actions. Assume that a breach will happen, enforce least privileged access, and make password changes and account reviews a regular practice, unquote. We're not done with CISA yet, though. CISA has ordered federal agencies to install newly released Microsoft Exchange security updates by this past Friday, which would have been April the 16th. Microsoft released the security updates for 4 vulnerabilities discovered by government agencies. These vulnerabilities are capable of remote code execution, with 2 vulnerabilities not requiring attackers to authenticate first. As of now, none of the vulnerabilities are known to be used in attacks, But CISA does believe that threat actors will reverse engineer the patches to create working exploits due to the severity and their public disclosure. This advisory and the order come with a modified version of Emergency Directive 21-02. All right, let's pivot just a little bit for a little more on what's going on with the infected Exchange servers. A court order has authorized the Federal Bureau of Investigation to remove web shells deployed on machines running on-premises versions of Microsoft Exchange Server, according to the Justice Department. As part of the operation, which authorized the activity for email servers in the United States, the FBI copied and removed, quote, one early hacking group's remaining web shell, unquote, from affected targets. This means the FBI was given court authority to go out over the internet and remotely access, also known as hack, other non-government entities for the benefit of that non-government entity. So take that for what that's worth. The web shells that the FBI were concerned with cleaning could have been used to maintain and increase unauthorized access to networks if left on the compromised machine. The FBI is calling the operation a success. Okay, so a little bit deeper. The court orders allowed FBI personnel to access web shells, enter passwords, make copies of said shells, and then issue commands through each of them to servers instructing them to delete delete the compromised shell from the target computer. The FBI is now attempting to contact owners or operators of the machines from which they removed the malicious web shells. So, in essence, the FBI did the work without telling anybody, and now they're going to go back and let you know they were on your networks. Those with publicly available contact information will receive an email message from an official FBI.gov email address. For those who do not have public information, the FBI will attempt to contact providers to provide more notice. So they may never even actually know if the FBI, which they should be able to because they're the FBI, can't find contact information on these entities. For another gift that keeps on giving. So we've had SolarWinds, we've had Exchange. Let's talk Accellion. The University of Colorado said last Friday, not this past one, but just the previous one, that the extent of a breach of Accellion's file transfer application on its community was far greater than initially reported, with more than 300,000 records, including social security numbers, having been exposed in the incident. To date, the file transfer application from Accellion is responsible, not directly, but because of being exploited in at least 10 higher education institution hacks. So what other parts of information or records were taken from the University of Colorado? Well, student identification numbers, grades, transcript, race and ethnic status, medical histories, and potentially other information according to the university. Most of the records are affiliated with Colorado's flagship campus in Boulder, although some came from the University of Colorado at Denver. The university's other campuses, including Colorado Springs and the Medical College in Aurora, do not appear at this time to be affected by the incident. And in no surprise, and like all of the other incidents we've reported, the records are being held for ransom, with the actors threatening to publish them in full if the monetary demands are not met. The University of Colorado has stated they will not pay the ransom. As a reminder, FireEye is the one that has flagged the hacking group known as UNC2546 as the one that is responsible for finding the zero-day vulnerability in Accellion's file transfer platform. Don't forget, this happened December 2020. We are now 4 months beyond that. The other schools that were involved so far that we know of: Stanford University, the University of Miami, the University of Maryland, Baltimore, Harvard Business School, and the Yeshiva University in New York, as well as several campuses of the University of California system. Moving on. Kentucky's Office of Unemployment Insurance shut down its account operations for 4 days, starting on the previous Friday as well, while it battles a cyber attack that forced it to reset more than 300,000 PINs to stop fraudsters from gaining access to accounts and diverting benefit payments. Operations were slated to go back online on the 13th of April, and residents of the state were told to wait until then to file new claims or request benefits. The Office of Unemployment says it will backdate any new claims. According to reps from the Kentucky Governor's General Counsel's office, suspects have been attempting to gain authorized access to customer data using predictable user information such as social security numbers, passwords, and PINs. And it looks like many claimants in Kentucky chose simple passwords, with 4,000 accounts using something as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1,500 of them using 2020. So these are, dare I say, simplistic, and I think that's being kind for what's a PIN or a password. As part of the mitigation and restoration efforts, the system will now force claimants to use an 8-digit password as opposed to a 4-digit one. And it looks like new claimants will have to create a 12-digit password and verify their email address. Then they will receive a 2-factor code, like a one-time pad number via their email, allowing them to regain access to their account, according to the state. And that's all the catch-up we've had. So now, Google's Project Zero is adding a 30-day grace period for patching. So Project Zero is going to be shifting from a fairly hard 90-day deadline to a new model that incorporates a new 30-day grace period to give users time to install patches before technical details are revealed. The project is keeping its famous 90-day disclosure period intact for vulnerabilities that remain unpatched. But if a patch appears within the disclosure period, the technical details will appear 30 days after the patch is released. So it could be 120 days before technical details actually go public. The reason for this move is it allows Google to decouple time to patch from time adoption rate, and it reduces the contentious debate around attacker and defender trade-offs and the sharing of technical details, advocating to reduce the amount of time that end users are vulnerable to known attacks. This is a complex thing. There's been a lot of contention over Project Zero. The good of it is it gets it out into the public sphere that there's a problem, and it kind of shames companies into making sure they get their patches together. However, by putting it in the public, it may become far more exacerbated by other actors before a company actually has the ability to fix the problem. So Project Zero is a double-edged sword for everybody. NERC has stated that public utilities, specifically electric utilities, have faced unprecedented cyber threats over this past year. About a quarter, or roughly 1,500 electric utilities sharing data with the North American Power Grid Regulator, have said they installed the malicious SolarWinds software. That's the bad. The good is the utilities did not report any significant follow-on activity from the hackers, but this type of broad exposure across a sector points to the challenges of protecting utilities, critical infrastructure, from supply chain breaches. It looks like a minority of that 1,500 downloaded the infected code onto what they call their operational technology networks. This is also just a broad term for more sensitive software and hardware used to manage industrial operations, also known as probably their SCADA systems, like this, not the administrative networks, the stuff that's actually providing the power across the grid. That's comforting. The silver lining to all this is it looks like the SolarWinds actors were not after the electric grid, or at least had no plans immediately to do anything with the electric grid, and most of those that were impacted by the infected file didn't see anything happen. I call that luck, not preparedness. The other problem, though, that the industry faced over the past year is thanks to our little human hacking event, the pandemic. The forcing of remote work, mass remote work, well before people were ready for it, has allowed another greater target of opportunity to infect those networks and systems. And the electric grid saw adversaries targeting and trying to take advantage of this new opportunity by an increase of 25% last year. So, like we've said before on this podcast, remote work is great. Remote work is a good thing. The options are wonderful. You have to be prepared and have the actual infrastructure, the training, the knowledge across your workforce to be able to be secure when you do it, because now your network is a porous, leaky faucet, because you don't know every computer and every piece of hardware and every IoT device in every employee's home. Speaking of vulnerabilities and remote work, a new zero-day vulnerability has been found in Zoom, which can be used to launch remote code execution attacks. At least it's been disclosed by researchers. The researchers at Computen Test demonstrated a 3-bug attack chain that caused the remote code execution on a target machine, and all without any form of user interaction. As of now, Zoom has not yet had time to patch this critical security issue, and the specified technical details of the vulnerability are being kept under wraps. However, an animation of the attack in action demonstrates how attackers were able to open the calculator program of a machine running Zoom following its exploit. Don't worry, this is an exploit that is non-specific. It attacks both Windows and Macintosh computers, only in thick client, so the actual full application. If you're using just the browser, it looks like the browser version of Zoom's video conferencing software is not impacted. So, half sees upside. What we do know also is that the attack must originate from an accepted external contact or be a part of a target's organizational account. So it can't just come, I won't say random. They have to be associated with either your session or with your organization's overall licensed package. So all the users that may have access to it, say like professors at a university. Not saying that the professors would do it, but perhaps one of their accounts or computers gets hacked and it's used as a pivot point through Zoom to get to somebody else. That could be what happens here. As best practice, Zoom recommends that all users only accept contact requests from individuals that they know and trust. And what else can you do as an end user right now? Nothing. Just wait for the patch to be issued. And if you're really that worried and paranoid about it, just use the browser version. That's all for the news this week. I'm your professor of cyber risk. We'll talk again soon. If you like this podcast, share it with your colleagues and friends. Your support is how we are able to continue to make this content. Thank you.